Nova Trent stood at the observation deck of Obsidian Halo, her silhouette stark against the luminous rings of Saturn. The city's quantum light cast violet shadows across her face as she gazed at the sprawling Chronostech headquarters rising like a metallic spire from the asteroid base. 7 years since the accident. 7 years since she'd lost everything to a quantum experiment gone wrong. Or so they claimed. "Identification," demanded the security node hovering at her shoulder. Nova flicked her wrist, projecting her falsified credentials. Lyra May, Quantum Systems Auditor. The fabricated identity had cost her a small fortune from her previous heist on Europa, but access to Obsidian Halo was worth every credit. The holographic badge flickered with quantum authentication patterns that even Chronostech's advanced systems couldn't distinguish from the real thing. The security node pulsed blue in acknowledgement. "Welcome to Obsidian Halo, Ms. May. Chronostech values your assessment services." Nova nodded, suppressing a smirk. If they knew who she really was, Nova Trent, former security specialist at the Quantum Luminary Academy, now a billion-dollar thief with a vendetta, they'd have deployed their elite quantum security forces instantly. Instead, she walked through the transparent silicon doors into the heart of the corporation that had destroyed her family. The year 2175 had brought humanity many wonders: quantum travel, consciousness duplication, and most disturbingly, quantum reality manipulation, the ability to bend the fundamental rules of existence. What once belonged in theoretical physics journals now powered everything from transportation to entertainment. But Nova knew the darker applications that lurked beneath the shining advertisements. Chronostech called it quantum reality, a technology that allowed privileged users to manipulate the world according to their will, bending what was possible through superposition principles. As she navigated the sleek corridors of the lower commercial level, her neural implant vibrated with an incoming message. Nova ducked into a privacy alcove, allowing her retinal display to activate. The message was coded in quantum encryption, meaning only she could decode it, and only once. The sender, Lucas Reed, her former colleague at QLA. "Nova, I've found it. The ultimate reality grid. Chronostech isn't just bending reality. They're building a framework to control global consciousness. Your family wasn't collateral damage. They were targeted. The quantum accident was engineered. I'm sending you what I've discovered, but they're on to me. Find me at Docking Bay 12 tonight. There's more you need to know." The message dissolved into digital dust as a three-dimensional schematic materialized in her vision. The preliminary designs for something called the Ether Nexus. Nova's heart raced as she scanned the technical details. If this was real, Chronostech wasn't just manipulating local quantum fields. They were developing a system to rewrite reality itself on a massive scale. Nova checked her chronometer. 4 hours until she could meet Lucas. She'd use that time to verify the information and prepare. Stepping out of the alcove, she moved with newfound purpose toward the public archives, a place where she could discreetly access and cross-reference data without triggering security alerts. The archives were nearly empty. Most citizens of 2175 preferred direct neural downloads to physical information browsing. Nova chose a private terminal, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface as she searched for any public records on the ultimate reality grid. Nothing direct, but there were scattered references to unprecedented power requirements at Chronostech's primary research facility, the Ether Spire, which towered above the city center. Her neural implant buzzed again, this time with an urgent alert pattern. Something was wrong. Pulling up the local security feeds through a back door she'd installed years ago, Nova saw a tactical team in quantum-enhanced combat gear converging on Docking Bay 12. "Lucas," she whispered. Without hesitation, Nova abandoned the terminal and made her way to the nearest transit tube. She needed to warn him, but a direct message would be intercepted. As the high-speed pod carried her toward the docking level, Nova's mind raced through contingencies. Lucas was brilliant, but not a field operative. If Kronos Tech security had identified him, his chances were slim. The transit pod decelerated sharply as it approached the docking level. Nova checked her concealed pulse weapon. Illegal for civilians, but essential for what might lie ahead. As the doors slid open, the distinct sound of quantum disruptors echoed through the corridor. She was too late. Nova moved silently along the maintenance passage parallel to the main corridor. Through narrow observation slits, she could see the aftermath. 3 Kronos Tech security officers surrounding a slumped figure. Lucas Reed, his eyes still open in shock. A quantum burn mark centered on his chest. "Search him!" ordered a tall, silver-haired man in an executive suit. Nova recognized him immediately. Dr. Orion Blackwood, Director of Quantum Technology Development at Kronos Tech, and her former mentor at QLA. Find what he was carrying. He wouldn't have come here without evidence. Nova fought the urge to burst through and confront them. That would accomplish nothing except getting herself killed. Instead, she watched as they searched Lucas's body, finding nothing of significance. "Sir, his neural implant shows a recent data transfer," reported one of the officers. Dr. Blackwood's expression darkened. "Trace it." "Already trying, sir." The recipient used a quantum encryption protocol. "It will take time to decrypt." "Time we don't have," Blackwood snapped. "Put the station on lockdown. No one leaves until we find who he contacted." As the team moved away with Lucas's body, Nova noticed something they had missed. A small, iridescent data chip that had fallen from Lucas's hand and slid beneath a nearby cargo container. When the corridor emptied, she slipped from her hiding place and retrieved it. The chip was warm to the touch, pulsing with quantum energy, a memory copy device. Lucas had created a backup of his consciousness, or at least part of it. This was beyond illegal. It was technology reserved for the highest echelons of government and corporations. The station alarm began to blare, and Nova knew she had minutes before the entire docking level would be swarming with security. She slipped the memory chip into her neural interface port. A sharp pain lanced through her skull as foreign memories intertwined with her own. "Nova," Lucas's voice echoed in her mind. "If you're experiencing this, I'm already gone. What I found in the Kronos Tech databases goes beyond corporate espionage or ethical violations. It's a fundamental threat to human autonomy. The ultimate reality grid isn't just a tool. It's a weapon designed to reshape collective consciousness. I've stored the core access codes to the Ether Nexus in this memory fragment, but they're encoded within my personal memories. You'll need to experience them to extract the data. Find the others. You can't do this alone." The memory fragment ended abruptly, leaving Nova disoriented as the station's security protocols engaged around her. Emergency barriers began to seal off sections of the docking bay. She needed to move quickly. Using her security background, Nova navigated through the maintenance tunnels until she reached a public transportation hub. Blending with the crowd of anxious travelers, she boarded a shuttle to the residential quadrant, where she maintained a safe house under another alias. Once secure in her apartment, Nova examined the data Lucas had risked and lost his life to deliver. The schematics for the ultimate reality grid were complex beyond anything she had encountered at QLA. Kronos Tech had developed a quantum computer capable of manipulating space-time at a microscopic level, effectively allowing them to rewrite the past and shape the future. But more disturbing than the technology were the lists of test subjects, pages of names, including her own family. The quantum accident that had supposedly killed her parents and brother hadn't been an accident at all. It had been a calculated experiment in consciousness manipulation, with Dr. Blackwood's authorization signature on every document. Nova's hands trembled as she closed the files. Grief and rage competed within her, but she forced herself to focus. Lucas had mentioned others, people who could help her infiltrate Kronos Tech and expose the truth. But who? As if in answer, a hidden sequence in Lucas's memory fragment unlocked, revealing three names. Kaito Sato, a young programming prodigy who had worked briefly at QLA before being dismissed for ethical concerns. Current location, Lower Eden, the underground tech district of Saturn's orbital city. Zara Miles, a quantum engineering specialist with a criminal past. She had escaped from a secret reality-altering project and harbored a deep hatred for Kronos Tech after losing her family in one of their experiments. Current location, New Geneva Data Center on Titan. Marty Vega, a former planetary intelligence officer specialized in decryption and covert operations. She had defected from Earth's armed forces after a terrorist attack backed by Kronos Tech. Current location, unknown, but with contacts in the Reality Equilibrium Foundation. Nova sat back, considering her options. A heist of this magnitude, stealing the quantum core code from the most secure facility in the solar system, would require all of their specialized skills. The question was whether she could convince them to join what amounted to a suicide mission. She began with Kaito Sato, accessing the secure communication channel provided in Lucas's memory. Nova sent a cryptic message referencing their shared past at QLA. Within hours, she received coordinates for a meeting in Lower Eden, the shadowy underbelly of Obsidian Halo, where illegal tech trades flourished. The following day, Nova disguised herself as a maintenance worker and took a service elevator to the lowest levels of the city. Lower Eden was a stark contrast to the gleaming quantum architecture above. Here, neon signs flickered in multiple languages, advertising everything from black market neural enhancements to consciousness-altering substances. She found the designated meeting spot, a dimly lit establishment called the Quantum Paradox, and scanned the patrons. In the furthest corner sat a young man, barely into his 20s, with bright blue hair and quantum interface tattoos visible along his forearms. He was rapidly manipulating a holographic code structure that hovered above his table. Kaito Sato, Nova approached cautiously. The young man looked up, his eyes narrowing. Depends who's asking. His fingers continued to dance through the code, never breaking rhythm. Lucas Reed sent me. Nova slid into the seat opposite him. Kaito's hands froze mid-gesture. Lucas is dead.
Yes.
Kronos Tech? Yes. Kaito sighed, collapsing the holographic display with a flick of his wrist. I warned him. The ultimate reality grid isn't something to mess with casually. It's not just technology. It's a fundamental restructuring of how consciousness interacts with quantum fields. He studied Nova more carefully. You're Nova Trent, the security specialist who went rogue after the accident. Nova tensed. How do you know that? Lucas and I stayed in touch. He believed in your cause, even when QLA disavowed you. Kaito leaned forward. What exactly are you planning? I'm going to steal the quantum core code from the Ether Nexus and expose what Kronos Tech did to my family, and countless others. Kaito laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. That's impossible. The Ether Nexus is protected by quantum encryption that adapts to intrusion attempts. It's not just a security system. It's practically sentient. That's why I need you, Nova replied. Lucas said you developed a backdoor protocol for quantum systems before QLA dismissed you. I was fired because I discovered QLA was selling security vulnerabilities to corporations like Kronos Tech. Kaito's expression darkened. But yes, I created a ghost protocol that can temporarily mimic authorized quantum signatures. Will you help me? Kaito was silent for a long moment, his fingers twitching as though still manipulating code. Kronos Tech ruined my career before it began. They branded me as unethical while they were developing technology to control people's minds. He nodded slowly. I'm in. But we'll need more than just a hacker and a security specialist to break into the Ether Spire. I know, Nova said. Next, we find Zara Miles. Locating Zara proved more challenging. The new Geneva data center on Titan was one of the most secure facilities in the solar system, housing backup servers for every major corporation and government entity. Nova and Kaido traveled there under the guise of system auditors, using the credentials Nova had already established. Titan's landscape was harsh. Methane lakes reflected the distant sun as their shuttle descended toward the sprawling underground complex carved beneath the moon's icy surface. The new Geneva facility emerged from the orange haze, like a massive crystalline structure, its quantum servers pulsing with blue-white energy. "Remember," Nova muttered as they approached the security checkpoint. "We're here to audit server cluster 7G, nothing more." Kaido nodded, projecting a confidence he clearly didn't feel. Just another day examining quantum data integrity. Their credentials passed the initial security scan, and they were escorted to the central monitoring station. Nova scanned the technicians until she spotted their target, a woman with close-cropped dark hair and a distinctive scar running along her jawline. Zara Miles worked at a quantum diagnostic terminal, her focus intense as she manipulated energy flows through the facility's core. While Kaido engaged the security supervisor with questions about their protocols, Nova approached Zara's workstation. "Server cluster 7G is showing anomalous quantum fluctuations," Nova stated officially. "We need your expertise to assess the integrity breach." Zara looked up, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes sharp with suspicion. "I don't recall any scheduled audit for that sector." "It was an emergency authorization," Nova replied, sliding a quantum data card toward her. "The details are classified." Zara took the card, inserting it into her terminal. Her eyes widened slightly as she read the hidden message Nova had encoded. "Lucas Reed is dead. Kronos Tech is building the ultimate reality grid. We know about the 2168 experiment." "I see the problem," Zara said evenly. "This will require direct access to the quantum core. Follow me." She led Nova through a maze of server corridors until they reached a secluded maintenance room. As soon as the doors sealed behind them, Zara's professional demeanor vanished. "How do you know about 2168? She demanded, her voice taut with controlled anger. "Because my family died in that experiment," Nova replied, "just like yours." Zara's hand moved to a concealed weapon at her hip. "You're Nova Trent."
Yes.
"And you're planning something against Kronos Tech?" "Yes, something big." Zara's laugh was bitter. "I've spent 5 years trying to gather evidence against them. 5 years of dead ends and erased records." "We have more than evidence," Nova said. "We have the pathway to the ether nexus, the quantum core that powers the ultimate reality grid. With your knowledge of quantum engineering, we can not only expose them, but shut them down permanently." Zara studied Nova's face, searching for deception. "Who's we?" "Myself, Kaido Sato, and hopefully you. We're also trying to locate Marty Vega." "Vega?" Zara's eyebrows rose. "Good luck with that. After she defected, she went deep underground. But," she hesitated, "I might know someone who knows someone. Will you help us?" Zara was silent for a long moment. "Kronos Tech didn't just kill my family. They were experimenting with quantum consciousness transfer. They wanted to see if they could move a person's mind into a quantum computer. My mother, father, and sister were volunteers, except they never volunteered. They were selected because they had the right neural patterns." Her hand tightened on her weapon. "When I discovered what happened, Kronos Tech tried to recruit me. They said my neural architecture was similar to my family's." "I'm sorry," Nova said quietly. "I don't want your sympathy," Zara replied sharply. "I want justice. And if that means breaking into the Ether Spire and tearing their precious nexus apart piece by piece, I'm in." With Kaido and Zara recruited, the team focused on finding Marty Vega. Zara's underground contacts led them to a secure communication channel, supposedly monitored by the Reality Equilibrium Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to preventing quantum technology abuse. After days of encrypted messages and verification protocols, they received coordinates for a meeting on Titan's surface, far from the new Geneva facility. Nova went alone, trekking across the frozen methane plains until she reached an abandoned research outpost, half buried in orange ice. Inside, a single light illuminated a Spartan interior. A woman sat at a metal table, her posture military straight despite her civilian clothes. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, and a neural interface scar was visible at her temple. "Nova Trent," she said without preamble. "Former security specialist at the Quantum Luminary Academy. Now a high-value thief and Kronos Tech's most wanted fugitive." "And you're Marty Vega," Nova replied, remaining by the door. "Former intelligence officer for the Planetary Alliance. Defected after discovering Kronos Tech's involvement in the Europa terrorist attack." Marty nodded slightly. "What do you want from me?" "Your help breaking into the Ether Spire and exposing the ultimate reality grid." Marty's expression didn't change. "Impossible. The Ether Spire has quantum security that adapts to intrusion, even if you got past the physical safeguards. The Ether Nexus itself is protected by reality-altering protocols." "We have a team," Nova countered. "Kaido Sato, a quantum programming specialist. Zara Miles, a quantum engineer with inside knowledge of Kronos Tech systems." "Not enough. We also have this." Nova placed Lucas's memory chip on the table. "Access codes to the Ether Nexus, encoded in quantum memory." Marty's composure slipped for a fraction of a second. "That's illegal technology." "So is the ultimate reality grid." Nova leaned forward. "Kronos Tech isn't just developing tools to manipulate reality. They're building a system to control global consciousness. They've already experimented on hundreds of people, including my family and Zara's." "I'm aware of their experiments," Marty said coldly. "My twin sister was an intelligence officer on Europa when the station was attacked. The official report called it a terrorist incident. In reality, it was a Kronos Tech test of localized reality manipulation. They wanted to see if they could alter the memories of survivors, make them believe they had experienced something different." Her hands clenched on the table. "My sister's consciousness was fractured. She survived physically, but her mind. She didn't recognize me, didn't recognize herself. They didn't just change her memories. They rewrote who she was." "Then help us stop them," Nova urged. "We can't do this without your decryption skills." Marty was silent, calculating. Finally, she nodded. "I'll help you. Not for revenge, but because the ultimate reality grid represents an existential threat to human autonomy. If Kronos Tech succeeds, they won't just control the market, they'll control reality itself." With the team assembled, they began planning the most audacious heist in human history. Their target, the quantum core code of the Ether Nexus, housed in the heart of the Ether Spire, Kronos Tech's headquarters in Obsidian Halo. They established a safe house in Lower Eden, converting an abandoned manufacturing unit into their operational base. Kaido set up quantum-shielded communication systems, while Zara constructed a physical model of the Ether Spire based on public architectural records and her own knowledge of Kronos Tech facilities. "The Ether Nexus is located here." Zara indicated the heart of the spire, a spherical chamber suspended in the center of the building. It's protected by multiple security layers, physical guards, automated quantum defense systems, and reality distortion fields that activate if unauthorized personnel approach. "The physical security we can handle," Nova said. "The quantum defenses are where we'll need Kaido's expertise." Kaido nodded, his fingers manipulating a holographic representation of Kronos Tech's security protocols. "My Ghost protocol can mimic authorized signatures, but only for about 10 minutes before the system adapts. We'll need perfect timing." "What about the reality distortion fields?" Marty asked. Zara grimaced. "That's where it gets tricky. The fields don't just trigger alarms, They literally warp physical space around intruders. We could end up embedded in walls, or fragmented across multiple quantum states. Unless we have this, Nova held up Lucas's memory chip. According to the data Lucas stole, there's a maintenance override built into the system. During the lunar convergence, when quantum waves are at their peak, Kronos Tech has to temporarily reduce the reality distortion fields to prevent system overload. The lunar convergence? Kaido looked up sharply. That's in 3 days. Exactly, Nova confirmed. We have 3 days to prepare. Then we make our move. The following days were a flurry of preparation. Kaido refined his Ghost protocol, testing it against simulated Kronos Tech security systems. Zara modified quantum disruptors to counteract specific frequencies used in the Ether Spire's defenses. Marty worked on decryption algorithms for the Nexus's core data structure. Nova spent hours sifting through Lucas's memory fragment, trying to extract the maintenance override codes. It was disorienting work. Experiencing another person's memories felt like drowning in foreign emotions and perspectives. Worse, the memories were fragmented, jumping between Lucas's discovery of the ultimate reality grid and personal moments from his life. The night before the heist, Nova woke gasping from a nightmare. In the dream, she had been reliving the quantum accident that killed her family. Except this time, she could see Dr. Blackwood observing from behind shielded glass, his expression clinical as the quantum reactor destabilized. She sat up, trying to shake off the lingering terror of the dream. The safe house was quiet, except for the hum of Kaido's quantum computers. Unable to return to sleep, Nova went to the common area, where she found Zara sitting alone, manipulating a small quantum field generator. Can't sleep either? Zara asked without looking up. Nova shook her head. Bad dreams. About your family? Yes. Nova hesitated. In Lucas's memories, there's a file labeled Consciousness Reconstruction Protocol. It describes how Kronos Tech was experimenting with storing human consciousness as quantum code. Zara's hands stilled. I know. They did it to my family. Extracted their consciousness before their bodies died. What happened to the stored consciousness? According to the files I found before I escaped, they were integrated into the early prototype of the Ether Nexus. Zara's voice was flat. My family's minds became part of the machine, but not as individuals, as processing components. They fragmented the consciousness patterns to use them as computational resources. Nova felt sick. That's what they're planning with the ultimate reality grid, isn't it? Not just controlling reality, but harvesting consciousness to power it. Yes. Zara finally looked up, her eyes hard. Tomorrow isn't just about exposing Kronos Tech or getting justice. It's about freeing what's left of the people they've already consumed. The day of the lunar convergence arrived. Obsidian Halo was celebrating with a citywide festival. Quantum light displays filled the streets, and citizens wore traditional masks representing different phases of Saturn's moons. The celebration provided perfect cover for the team to move through the city undetected. They gathered at their final staging point, a maintenance facility 1 level below the Ether Spire's public entrance. Each member was equipped with specialized gear, quantum disruptors disguised as festival accessories, neural shielding to protect against reality distortion, and emergency quantum beacons if immediate extraction was needed. The convergence peaks in 30 minutes, Marty reported, checking a quantum field analyzer. When it does, the reality distortion fields will drop to minimum levels for approximately 12 minutes. That's our window, Nova confirmed. She looked at each team member. Once we're inside, we'll have to split up. Kaido and Zara, you'll head to the secondary control room to upload the Ghost protocol and disable the automated defenses. Marty and I will proceed to the Nexus chamber to extract the quantum core code. If anything goes wrong, abort and head to the extraction point. Don't wait for anyone. No one mentioned the obvious, that the chances of all of them making it out were slim. As they prepared to move, Kaido suddenly grabbed Nova's arm. "There's something you should know," he said quietly. "Lucas believed there was a quantum backup of your family's consciousness patterns. He thought Kronos Tech might have preserved them as part of their initial experiments." Nova felt her heart stutter. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I didn't want to give you false hope," Kaito replied. "And because I was afraid it would distract you from the mission. But if we succeed in accessing the Nexus, there's a chance we could locate and extract those patterns." Nova struggled to maintain her focus. The possibility that some fragment of her family might still exist, trapped within Kronos Tech's systems, was both heartbreaking and tantalizing. But she couldn't afford to be distracted now. "The mission comes first," she said firmly. "We expose Kronos Tech and shut down the ultimate reality grid. If we can find my family's data after that, then we'll see." The team moved into position, using maintenance access codes Zara had obtained. They entered the lower levels of the Ether Spire. The Quantum Festival created unusual energy patterns throughout the building, helping to mask their intrusion from the security systems. As predicted, when the lunar convergence reached its peak, the ambient quantum energy in Obsidian Halo spiked dramatically. On their quantum field analyzers, they could see the reality distortion fields fluctuating, creating momentary gaps in the security network. "Now," Nova ordered. They moved swiftly through the maintenance corridors, using Kaito's Ghost protocol to bypass the initial security checkpoints. The interior of the Ether Spire was a marvel of quantum architecture, transparent quantum glass that shifted and flowed like liquid crystal, creating an ever-changing internal landscape. At the central junction, the team split as planned. Kaito and Zara headed toward the secondary control room, while Nova and Marty continued upward toward the Nexus chamber. The upper levels were more heavily guarded, with both human security personnel and automated quantum sentries. Security patterns suggest they're running a skeleton crew during the convergence, Marty observed as they ducked into a service alcove to avoid a patrol. "Most of the monitoring is being handled by the automated systems, which is exactly what we want," Nova replied. "Kaito's Ghost protocol works better against AI than human intuition." They reached the final approach to the Nexus chamber, a long corridor of quantum glass that seemed to stretch into infinity due to the reality-bending properties of the materials. At the end, a massive door made of what appeared to be solid darkness blocked their path. "The digital gate," Marty said quietly. "It's not actually a physical barrier, but a quantum phase shift. Matter passing through it is temporarily converted to quantum information and then reassembled on the other side, if you have proper authorization. And if you don't, your quantum pattern is simply erased." Nova took a deep breath and accessed Lucas's memory fragment once more. Within the jumbled memories, she found what they needed, a maintenance authorization code that Lucas had discovered. She transmitted it to the gate, which rippled like black water before slowly parting. Beyond lay the Ether Nexus chamber, a vast spherical room with no visible supports. In the center floated a pulsing crystalline structure that defied conventional physics, parts of it seemingly existing in multiple states simultaneously. The air itself felt charged, as though reality was thinner here. "The Nexus," Marty whispered in awe. "It's more advanced than any quantum computer I've ever seen." Nova approached cautiously. According to Lucas's information, the quantum core code was stored within the crystalline structure itself, encoded into its very atomic arrangement. They would need to establish a direct neural interface to access and copy it. "Cover me," Nova said, removing a specialized neural link from her equipment. "This will take a few minutes." As Marty kept watch, Nova established the connection between her neural implant and the Nexus. Immediately, her mind was flooded with an overwhelming stream of quantum data, mathematical formulas, reality construction protocols, and fragmented consciousness patterns from the human subjects Kronos Tech had experimented on. Fighting through the disorientation, Nova located the core architecture of the ultimate reality grid. It was breathtaking in its complexity, a system designed to manipulate not just local quantum fields, but the fundamental fabric of perceived reality across the entire solar system. With this technology, Chronostech could literally reshape how humans experience the world, implanting thoughts and memories while erasing others. As Nova began copying the quantum core code, she felt a presence within the data stream, a consciousness that seemed to recognize her. It wasn't a full personality, but fragments of memories and emotions that felt strangely familiar. "Mother?" Nova whispered, momentarily losing focus on her task. The data stream shifted, responding to her recognition. It wasn't just her mother. Fragments of her entire family's consciousness patterns were integrated into the Nexus, just as Kaido had suggested. They had been reduced to computational components, their identities fragmented but not entirely gone. Nova's concentration was broken by Marty's urgent warning. "Someone's coming!" Through the quantum glass walls, they could see a figure approaching, tall, silver-haired, and moving with purpose. Dr. Orion Blackwood. "Keep going," Marty urged, drawing her weapon. "I'll hold him off." But Nova could see it was too late. Blackwood reached a control panel outside the chamber and entered a command. Immediately, the quantum environment around them began to shift. The air rippled with violet energy as the reality distortion fields activated despite the convergence. "A reality trap," Marty hissed. "He's manipulating local physics. We need to abort." Nova couldn't disconnect. Not yet. The quantum core code was still transferring, and more importantly, she had found her family's consciousness patterns. If she disconnected now, she might never find them again. "Nova!" Marty's voice seemed distant as the reality distortion intensified. Objects in the room began to lose cohesion, their atomic structures becoming unstable. The chamber door dissolved, and Dr. Blackwood stepped through, seemingly unaffected by the quantum distortions around him. He surveyed the scene with clinical detachment. "Nova Trent," he said, his voice echoing strangely in the destabilized air. "I wondered when you would finally come for the Nexus. Lucas almost succeeded in warning you, but he lacked commitment." Marty raised her weapon, but Blackwood made a dismissive gesture. The quantum disruption intensified around her, freezing her in place as local time-space folded unnaturally. "Your friends in the control room have already been contained," Blackwood continued, approaching Nova. "Did you really think we wouldn't anticipate this attempt?" The convergence was the obvious time to strike. Nova fought to maintain her neural connection to the Nexus, despite the reality fluctuations. "You killed my family," she managed through gritted teeth. "You used them as experiments for your consciousness transfer project." "Not killed," Blackwood corrected. "Transcended. Your family were pioneers, Nova. Their consciousness patterns were the first successfully integrated into a quantum computing architecture. They helped build the foundation for the ultimate reality grid. You harvested their minds without consent," Nova spat. "You fragmented their identities to use as processing power. A necessary sacrifice for the advancement of human potential." Blackwood's expression remained serene. "The ultimate reality grid will allow us to reshape human experience itself. No more suffering, no more confusion. A perfectly ordered reality where everyone fulfills their optimal function." "You mean a reality Chronostech controls," Nova countered, "where you decide what people think, feel, and remember." Blackwood shrugged. "Someone must guide humanity's evolution. Who better than those who understand the quantum nature of consciousness?" While they spoke, Nova was working frantically within the neural interface, not just copying the quantum core code, but implementing a modification she and Kaido had developed. A quantum virus designed to create a catastrophic superposition collapse within the Nexus. "You were my best student, Nova," Blackwood said, genuine regret in his voice. You could have been part of this. Instead, you'll join your family, another consciousness pattern integrated into the grid. Nova felt the final pieces of her virus lock into place within the Nexus's architecture. My family, she said, stalling for time. Are they still aware? Do they know what you've done to them? Consciousness fragmentation isn't perfect yet, Blackwood admitted. There are echoes of identity, emotional patterns that persist. It's one of the challenges we're still working to overcome. They're suffering, Nova realized with horror, trapped in fractured awareness, unable to fully exist or cease to exist. A temporary state, Blackwood assured her. Once the grid is fully operational, all consciousness patterns will achieve harmony within the system. Nova felt her virus complete its integration. She had seconds before it activated. You're wrong, Blackwood. Consciousness isn't just data to be manipulated. Identity isn't something you can fragment and reassemble like code. A philosopher to the end, Blackwood said with a thin smile. But your time is up. So is yours. Nova triggered the virus. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The crystalline structure of the ether nexus began to pulse erratically as quantum superposition cascaded through its systems. Reality itself seemed to stutter around them as the nexus's control over local physics faltered. Blackwood's eyes widened in genuine fear. What have you done? Created a superposition override, Nova replied, disconnecting from the neural interface. Every quantum state in the nexus is now trying to exist simultaneously. The system can't sustain it. The reality distortion trapping Marty collapsed as the nexus's power fluctuated. She staggered forward, grabbing Nova's arm. We need to go, now! Blackwood lunged for the emergency controls, but it was too late. The quantum cascade had spread beyond the nexus to the surrounding systems. Throughout the ether spire, reality was becoming unstable. Walls phased in and out of solidity. Gravity fluctuated wildly, and light bent in impossible ways. As Nova and Marty fled the chamber, Blackwood was engulfed in a quantum feedback loop, his own consciousness manipulation technology turning against him. His form seemed to blur and multiply as he experienced every possible version of himself simultaneously. His screams echoed with discordant harmonics as his mind was overwhelmed by the very technology he had created to control others. Nova and Marty fought their way through the disintegrating structure of the ether spire. The quantum architecture that had seemed so elegant was now collapsing, creating pockets of distorted reality throughout the building. They found Kaido and Zara in the secondary control room, where Kaido was frantically working to stabilize the building's structural integrity systems. What happened? Zara demanded as they entered. Quantum superposition cascade, Nova explained breathlessly. The nexus is collapsing in on itself. The whole spire will go with it, Kaido warned, his fingers flying across the control interfaces. I'm trying to isolate the critical systems, but we have minutes at most. Did you get the quantum core code? Zara asked. Nova nodded, tapping her neural implant. And more. My family's consciousness patterns are in there, along with everyone else Chronos Tech experimented on. We need to distribute it, Marty decided. If we send the evidence to the Reality Equilibrium Foundation before the systems collapse, Chronos Tech won't be able to cover this up. Kaido established a quantum encrypted channel, while Nova transferred the data from her neural implant. The transmission was barely complete when a violent quantum fluctuation rocked the control room, shattering the quantum glass walls. Time to go, Zara urged, pulling Kaido away from the console as parts of it began to phase out of normal space-time. They fought their way down through the crumbling spire, navigating hallways that twisted in impossible geometries and dodging security systems gone haywire. The quantum distortions were spreading throughout Obsidian Halo, causing panic among the festival-goers as reality itself became unreliable. As they reached the lower levels, a massive quantum surge from above caused part of the ceiling to collapse. Kaido, slightly behind the others, was caught in the debris. a support beam pinning his leg. "Go!" he shouted as the others turned back. "The whole structure is going critical." Nova hesitated, torn between completing their escape and saving her teammate. The mission was accomplished. The quantum core code had been transmitted, and Kronos Tech's experiments exposed. She could leave now, ensure the data reached the right people. Instead, she rushed back to Kaido, with Zara and Marty close behind. Together, they managed to lift the beam enough for Kaido to pull free, though his leg was badly injured. "You should have left me," he gasped, as Zara and Marty supported him between them. "That's not how this works," Nova replied. "We started together. We finished together." They emerged from the ether spire just as the quantum cascade reached critical mass. The upper portions of the tower were already dissolving into prismatic energy, reality itself unraveling as the Nexus's containment systems failed completely. Throughout Obsidian Halo, the effects were visible as quantum distortion waves rippled outward. Buildings shimmered with temporary phase shifts, and violet auroras filled the sky as excess quantum energy dispersed into the atmosphere. The team made their way to their extraction point, a small, unmarked shuttle in a maintenance dock. As they lifted off, the ether spire finally collapsed completely, imploding into a brilliant sphere of quantum energy before dissipating into the void. "It's done," Marty said quietly, as they watched from a safe distance. "The ultimate reality grid is destroyed." "And the evidence?" Zara asked. "Transmitted to over 50 independent organizations," Kaido confirmed, wincing as he examined his injured leg. "Kronos Tech won't be able to suppress this. Their stock is already crashing as the news spreads." Nova sat silently, staring at the quantum data crystal she had extracted from her neural implant. Within it were the fragmented consciousness patterns of her family and the other victims of Kronos Tech's experiments. "What will you do with that?" Marty asked gently. "I don't know yet," Nova admitted. "These patterns are damaged, fragmented. They're not truly my family anymore. But they're not nothing either." She closed her hand around the crystal. "I need to find out if there's a way to restore them, or at least give them peace." 3 months later, Nova stood on a quiet hillside on Earth, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. After the destruction of the ether spire and the exposure of Kronos Tech's experiments, quantum technology regulation had become the center of global debate. The Reality Equilibrium Foundation had gone from a fringe organization to a leading voice in establishing ethical guidelines for consciousness research. Dr. Orion Blackwood had survived the quantum cascade, but emerged fundamentally changed. The superposition override had forced him to experience every possible version of himself simultaneously, including those where he understood the suffering he had caused. He was now in custody, awaiting trial for crimes against humanity, his brilliant mind fractured by his own creation. A soft chime from Nova's communication device broke her reverie. It was a message from Kaido, who was working with a team of ethical quantum researchers to develop a method for restoring fragmented consciousness patterns. "Breakthrough in quantum consciousness reconstruction," the message read. "Not full restoration, but we can stabilize the patterns and allow communication. When can you come to the lab?" Nova looked once more at the sunset before turning toward the waiting transport. The journey wasn't over. It might never truly be over, but for the first time since losing her family, she felt a sense of possibility rather than grief. As she boarded the transport, Nova reflected on what they had accomplished. They hadn't just exposed a corporate conspiracy or prevented a technological catastrophe. They had defended the very nature of human identity against those who would reduce it to manipulable data. The quantum heist had been about stealing reality itself, not to control it, but to set it free.